Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Something new. You know, if you missed my January roundup, let's go back to that for a second. What I'm going to be doing here, I played a bunch of new games to me in January. Snap judgments. Quick, 1 minute or less descriptions of the game and my thoughts on it so that you can get a little bit more. Because, I mean, everybody wants to watch like the 22-minute review for one game, but what about the reverse? What about a bunch of games in a small, packed time frame? Let's go. Let's do it. A little bit of everything. As always, you like this, smash subscribe. So close to 5,000, so close to more Patreon people. Let me know what you want to see on the Patreon, and let's just get into it right now. Okay, starting the snap judgments right now. Voyages, the Kickstarter from December 2021, the roll and write. Very simplistic, very straightforward, enough nuance there that I feel like this is probably going to be the best bang for my buck Kickstarter of the year, maybe even all time. You're just navigating the seas. You have 3 dice. You get to choose to use 2 of them. One is a direction in one of the 6 different directions you can go. And then you move that many spaces. Has a good solo mode. Every time you also get to use one of the dice down here to fill in one of the numbers, which when you get one of the whole rows or columns filled, you get an extra bonus. You're dropping off goods. You're getting sailors. You're defeating the little monster right here. And it just works. Number 2, Dune Imperium. Gonna be one of my best games of 2021. I'll tell you that right now. If you're not familiar with it, from a worker placement, deck building side of things, I'm not a big fan of worker placement. I am a big fan of deck building. I think the two here are merged very well. There's enough interaction. There's also enough that you have enough control over that other people affecting your plans should not, if you are doing well enough, be able to crimp your style too much. This is one of those that I feel so strongly about that I will definitely be thinking of picking up the Rise of Ix, is that how you pronounce it, from a retail. And again, I don't pick up retail a whole lot, and so that's how strongly I feel about this. It works well, everybody likes it, it plays quickly, only 10 points, which actually, once you know what you're doing, boom, 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 straightforward, under an hour. Next up, Floating Floors. This dexterity-based ninja game is very intriguing. You're building levels with pieces underneath, laying the board down, putting pieces on top, navigating your ninja across whatever color your ninja is, and kind of doing a little bit of take that. And then the real trick is that when you get next to one of these little things here at the bottom, you have to pick the whole board up, rotate the whole board by 90 degrees and not have anything fall, be able to actually get this icon. And first one to get all of your icons wins, which is definitely different. It's hard. I can't emphasize that enough, because these ninjas are like literally the size of these pieces here, and it does not give you a lot of wiggle room when you're actually maneuvering the ninjas here. And this is the ninja that's standing straight up. Let's see if we can figure out, there's a ninja that's like sort of attack position here. Apparently I'm the only one who took a picture of the attack ninja positions, so maybe I'll upload one right here in place of this so you can kind of see. But especially the shapes that are like hexagonal, square, and the triangular ones especially are really hard to balance, because as you're traversing across, not only do you need to put it on each space, like you can't just march it across, you have to put it down, let it go, put it down, let it go, which adds another degree of difficulty. So it's on Kickstarter crowdfunding right now. Check it out if you're looking for something interested for a dexterity. Long Shot the Dice Game. Again, another Kickstarter. You're basically pushing these horse around the track one at a time, but each one of them also, when it moves, has additional ones it moves alongside of it. So like if you move 1-3, anything that's marked along the bottom of that horse card also can get moved. And you're doing sort of a bingo operation here, a little bit of your set collection here with the jerseys and the caps, and then the betting. And the betting is the main theme, and that's where it's really tricky. Do you like betting? As a roll and write, it works really well. But if you're not a big fan of roll and writes, or you're not a big fan of betting or the risk high reward of this, you're not going to like it. But if you are looking for something like this, it plays really well, has a good solo version as well. Next up, Anna's Roundtable, Fire Emblem. You're probably not familiar with this game at all, but it's sort of a 1 versus 1 head-to-head tactical grid-based dueler, if you will, like a 3D almost Exceed. It's going to be interesting. I need to get more plays of it, because it's coming to backers very, very shortly in the next month or so, because it's in the shipping process right now. And I'm not sure yet, because there's a lot of keywords, there's a lot of stuff going on. The art is fantastic, because they commissioned like individual artists for almost every single card in the game, and it's a fan service. I'm not sure whether or not it's too ambitious, or I just don't have enough to play into it. So that's really what I'm going to have to be deciding over the next week or two. and it's got a lot of things going on: the tactics, the maneuvering, the strategy, the keywords. And so if you're looking for something different along those lines, it's got it in spades. And if you're a fan of Fire Emblem, I definitely think you should check it out. Okay, so I finally got Aquatica played to the table. If you're not familiar with Aquatica, it's sort of a deck building-esque game of, well, Atlantis, where you have these shifting, moving cards that go under your board here, where you're buying one of several cards on the board based on the currency, one of the two currencies that you have available based on the cards that you're playing or the bonuses that you can acquire as you're shifting those cards up. Then you have these little mantas, which are bonuses that you can flip over, or you can earn more of them, you know, various endgame triggers. I didn't play it with the cold water expansions. I have it, but I don't know. I went really hot into this when it was first like getting all the hotness and hype, and now I'm sort of cooling on it. I don't know. I'm gonna need a couple more plays on it because the first play through alone and then, you know, another time has not shown me yet whether or not this is going to be a game for me. I just don't know. I need more plays, and I don't say that about a lot of these games. I get a pretty good snap judgment on my own personal half when I play a game either alone or with other people about, okay, I like it, I love it, or meh. And this one I'm sort of lukewarm on in a good way, but also in a, you know, if I don't love it nowadays, I mean, if this was 2 or 3 years ago, I would have, you know, kept this game in a heartbeat. But now, limited shelf space, limited availability, limited everything, especially with the review stuff coming in and all the turnover and everything, it's going to be a make it or break it, and I'm not sure yet. Battle for Biternia. This is a pixel 8-bit based MOBA game. This is the best MOBA out there. I'll put that out there. My review is going to be coming out shortly. I forgot to take pictures the last time I played with it, so I need to get some B-roll. But this is a great game. There's a lot of variability. There's a ton of tactics. There's a lot of strategy. And if you're looking for something MOBA-esque, I will just leave it there that this is probably the best one on the market right now, period. If you're looking for anything to go along these lines, this is a 2-player only. That's probably the only deficit. But I would argue that these games probably are better at 2 because with 4 people, it's going to get a little bit too chaotic and you don't have enough control over what your side is doing or the other side. But there's enough variability in terms of the different powers that your characters have. I mean, they have a certain number, but they're not overwhelmingly a ton of them, so you're not trying to learn like a new card every single time, every single turn. There's a countdown system in terms of when you use the abilities. There's a little bit of bluffing and a little bit of strategy as well from that aspect. And there's enough character asymmetry in terms of the character classes that you're not going to be hard for wear even with the base game. Next up, City of the Great Machine, also funded last year on crowdfunding. This is a one versus all where you are going up against the Great Machine. It is one person acting as the machine and the other people acting as these rogue agents trying to create a riot and uprising within the city of this AI-built system. Rage Against the Machine! I mean, this is literally that as a game, only it's a 1v all. But it's different. It's not a battler. Like, when you think of this, you think of battling. No, this is more like moving your guy around from area to area, inciting things. It's got sort of this modular setup where the rooms all have to touch each other, but they can sort of do what Castles of the Mad King Ludwig does. It also has hidden movement where you're moving around from area to area, the Great Machine trying to guess, the agents trying to stay away so they don't get arrested. You can see here you have the little robots that are sort of guarding areas, and then you have your player characters moving around from area to area, touching like I said. Then you also have this progress wheel that sits in the center that determines how well your uprising is doing and what is needed to win the uprising in the first place. Again, if you're looking for something different as a one versus all, if you're looking for something that is more hidden bluffing, hidden movement strategy, as opposed to dungeon crawls, this is a different take on it. Now, it's not going to be for everybody, but it's got different aspects of things that I was not expecting when I was initially given the presentation. So if that interests you, check it out. Next up, Colab. Colab is this worker placement, mad scientist, Frankenstein-esque game where you're also building a big tableau as well as the actual mad scientist lab around the outside as you go. Now, don't be fooled. This has miniatures. They're completely unnecessary. So if you're worried about that, again, you can play them without it, but it gives a little more table presence. It's definitely a good, solid game. It's definitely not for me in the long run. I am just not a worker placement person, and that's what this is majority of. It's got a great system. I have not seen anything like it in terms of putting the workers down and picking them up, and that affects what resources and what abilities you're going to be using that turn, as well as building the outside of the tower itself to give you more abilities in each area in the first place. All in all, I need me a Cthulhu cat, though. Otherwise, I mean, if you're looking at this and you said, is this going to be a good game? Yeah, this is going to be a good game. People are going to like it when they get it. The tableau management is a little bit tricky because of only the 3 suits that you're having, and sometimes you just don't get the cards you want. But C'est la vie. Next up, Fossilis. This is a weird combination. Like, I feel like it's almost a little bit too heavy for a kid's game, and I feel like it's almost a little bit too light for me if I want to play something a little bit heavier. It's got this really unique mechanic, though, of how you're shifting and moving around these pieces to get underneath, to get the bones, and the bones will allow you to create the pieces of the dinosaur that you need in order to get the points. And it's got a lot of layers. And I mean that literally and figuratively. I didn't even try and do a dad pun there. But it works well because it's got a lot of those layers. So if you're looking for something slightly heavier from a kid's side of things, you can incorporate some of them, but not all of them. If you're looking for something slightly meatier on the bone, then you can also have this because it's got enough depth there that, you know, this can easily play you an hour to an hour and a half if you play more from the adult aspect. And contrary to what you're thinking here, when you look down, it's not like Operation Dexterity where you're reaching in. No, you just get the one that you want underneath, and you're shifting around these tiles based on how you want to maneuver them. Ginkgopolis, this was a game that has always been presented to me, always as a game that was out of print, and it finally came back in print, and I traded for it, and it's city building, resource management, and I don't really know how else to describe it in the sense that there's 3 different colors, and there's 3 different ways that you're going to be doing this, and building around these letters around the outside, around the outside, round the outside, round the outside. But these towers that you're going to be building and taking over from other people and giving them resources and then taking them back and then building more resources and, you know, sort of getting your own tableau to get points. It's definitely different. I've not played anything like it. I like it a lot, but I just don't know if it's going to have the opportunity to hit the table. I can see why this game was so highly sought after. I can also see why people hate it absolutely because of the nature of some of the take that, as well as the nature of some of the cards that you're just not going to get the number of the cards you need, or you're just not going to get the resources in the order that you want them. So, I mean, all in all, it's a fantastic game. If you're interested at all, I highly recommend you check out the 2nd edition. Next up is Glow. This is an import game. It's also known as Lure over in French, hence Lure. This is probably one of the more beautiful, artistically speaking, games that I have. Now, I'm not sure how I feel about this as a game because when I play this game, it seems more Zen-like. You are heavy dice rolling in order to manage and navigate through this board based on the symbols that you roll that allow you to go to each place as you go along the path. And at the bottom of your little monsters here, there are going to be symbols that either give you bonuses or potentially things that you do not want to roll to give you points or resources in order to just get more. And it's a tableau drafting game in a sense where you're drafting one of these animals each turn, and depending on which one you get will depend on how many dice you get. And there's 2 different boards that you can be playing, and so there's a lot of variety and there's a lot of variability here. But again, I just don't know if it's like a truly fun game or it's a little bit more of a Zen exercise disguised in a game. So I could see myself going either way with this just after a couple plays. Now we have Imperium Legends. I'm highly divided on this. I included this on my list of games that I thought didn't have a very good rulebook because I don't think the rulebook is very good. It's not very good. It's an incredibly complex, deep, engaging deck builder for 1 to 2 players that needs a complete revamp of the rulebook of how to play. I mean, it's like it was somebody who already knew how to play, wrote all of this stuff down by memory. That's what it feels like to me. Because there's just parts missing, there's stuff not well explained. The decks are so asymmetric that each deck almost has to have its almost separate rules. There are so many nuances like, okay, in this box, these 3 of the 6 or 8 that you have are completely different in terms of X, Y, and Z rules. Which is fine, but that's a lot of overhead, and as a game that's harder to get to the table and lengthier because this is not under an hour game potentially, even if you're playing solo, depending on how used to it you are. It's a little bit intimidating. I'm not sure how I feel about getting Imperium Classics now. I'm not sure whether or not I like this. I don't know. Like, it's just a different aspect of deck building in terms of you're building your own deck and you're doing your own thing. Sort of like Marvel Villainous or Disney Villainous, where you're doing your own thing and what you do on your own thing is going to be more under your control, and what other people are doing really doesn't always influence you or matter. It's just who can do it faster and better. Which, again, is sort of like a good mind exercise. At the same time, it's very frustrating as well. I finally got the copy of the Lords of the Ring Confrontation, my Grail game. I also got the deluxe version. I don't really know how I feel about it yet. My wife and I played just once, and so we played it one side, and I know the rulebook even says to play both sides, but it's going to be a challenge because there's a meta to this, and the meta, and for my wife and I, that's difficult at times at best. So you're going across this grid-based system, you know your stuff, you're playing Stratego essentially with Lord of the Rings, and each of these characters has slightly different asymmetric powers, and you get to choose which ones go where at the beginning, and ones have certain powers in certain areas, you need to avoid them, or, you know, angle them at certain people at certain times. And you have cards that you're going to be playing on each battle too that can affect the outcome of the battle in the first place. And again, this is a heavy meta game, and I'm not sure how I do with meta, even though I love the concept of it. Next up, Mercurial, coming to Kickstarter in the near future. This is one, again, speaking of this, is one of the most beautiful artistic games that I've seen in a while. It's dice rolling, it's engine building, it's combo building, it's resource management, but it's sort of taking Century Golem-esque from Plan B games and taking it to the next level, adding essentially, if you want to think about it, a third element or a third row. Does that sound good to you, or does that not sound good to you? Because if you do that, then you're going to have a longer game. And that's what this is, only you're also adding dice rolling that are going to give you additional resources in order to help you engine build on top of everything else. Next up, MetroX. I got this sent to me as a print and play, and I never had the base game, so I think I have the wrong cards to draw from and to fill on these boxes. And MetroX is essentially you draw a card, you click off as many boxes, and if you run into each other, well, then you just can't go any further unless you get it on the extension one. And I just don't know. I could see myself, I don't know what I'm going to do with a print and play that doesn't have all the components. Just throw it out? I don't know. Just keep it? I don't know. Well, whatever. We'll see. I kind of like the idea of it, but I'm not sure the actuality of it yet. Motor City, the upcoming roll and write from Motor City Gameworks. It's a heavy. It's from the same designers that put you in the seat of Three Sisters, and it's going to be heavier than that, I would say. I would dare say. Maybe it's not. I haven't played Three Sisters yet, but it gives me that feel of you have two sheets that you're managing of your own, another sheet that's going to be handling the dice that you're going to be choosing from in an individual round, and you're going to be having to choose like one of essentially big 4 areas that you're going to be mixing and matching from, because all of the areas are intertwined in terms of the bonuses and the interactions and the resources and the symbology that they use. And does that sound interesting to you as a crunchier roll and write, or does that turn you off? Because, I mean, it's definitely got an audience and a niche, and if Three Sisters is any indication, then this one is going to be just as well received. Next up, Remember Our Trip. This is a weird, interesting memory game where you're building on your own board, and then when you build on your own board, it goes onto the central board. And if other people can match the central board, they're going to get points. But other people can build on the central board before you, and then you have to match what's on there too. Otherwise, you're going to risk not getting the bonus points, and you're sort of doing this tango of who can get what where fastest. But there's also stuff on the big board in the first place that you want to get to match on your board. So there's a lot of aspects going on. As a Japanese import, it's definitely a unique game. I just don't know. I don't know. I could see myself going either way on this one, sort of like Aquatica. It's a great idea in my mind, but I wasn't sure, sort of like with Glow, how much fun I was having with both of those. And that's the biggest concern. Now, there's 2 different modes that you can play in terms of these little, in terms of the little monuments. And so it gives you enough variety. I'm not concerned about that. And it's drafting, so you're just pulling chips out of a bag and putting them in each area, and then you choose whatever area you want to use on your map. So there's decision making there, tactically and strategically. Next up, Seas of Havoc, the Kickstarter crowdfunding game of January, where you are traversing with a worker placement action programming mechanism to blow up other people's pirate ships on a grid-based system. Again, I think this is a really solid game. I was impressed by how solid this was. And if you're looking at this and you're going, again, is this going to be a good game just like Colab? I have absolutely no doubts that this is a solid game. But it's whether or not it's for you, because the first round of things you're doing worker placement, and the second round of things you're doing action programming. And the action programming cards are going to depend on sometimes the worker placement that you did in the first round, whether that's a resource or whether that is the placement of them in the first place, which gives you bonuses on the cards of your action programming. And there's take that. I mean, you're strafing other ships, trying to blow them up, trying to do damage cards that get put into their deck of action programming cards that's going to muff it up for them. And again, I don't know, action programming and worker placement. I'm not a big either, but I recognize solid design when I see it, and that's what Seas of Havoc was. Skytear Horde was the next one. I did the preview on this one as well. And this one, it was a little random. It was a little random when you're pulling from the deck, but it's doing unique things in terms of how you're pulling these mobs down to the board and how you're utilizing them. They have different battles, different monsters, different decks that you can utilize. It's all pre-constructed. But again, it's random. So if you don't want to have just the random draw of the deck be SOL for you, I mean, that's going to turn you off completely. If you also don't like the idea that the only time that you're going to be drawing potentially is when you defeat an enemy monster, that's also going to be off-putting. Otherwise, it's a solid design, especially as a 1-person. I didn't play it as a 2-person, but if you're looking for a solo game that plays quickly, that you can get to the table, that has sort of modularity in that sense of the different elements, this works well. Okay, let's talk about it. Too many bones. I used too much time saying that. I played it. I know why people love it. I know why people hate it. It's definitely a min-max game. There's a lot of overhead. The rulebook is not that good. I'm torn on it because I just went in on the last game founding, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it now, because it's going to be hard to get to the table. Point blank, hard to get to the table, but I understand the customizable scenario situation, and I understand why people say just get the base game, because there's a ton of stuff in there. The dice rolling is fine. There's just so much nuance. There's so much upkeep. It feels overwhelming, especially when you're playing solo with like more than one gear lock. And that's my dilemma, is right now I don't have anyone to play with. And so if I had someone consistently to play with, I would have no problems keeping this in my collection whatsoever. At the same time, I don't right now. And I don't know if this would be the next step up for my kids. I mean, it's definitely not. Let's not kid ourselves. And so I could see myself keeping it for a while, but I could also see myself selling it off at a slight loss because I traded for the base game in the first place. Next up is TZAAR. I don't know why this is the 7th ranked abstract game on Board Game Geek. This should be like top 5 easily. And this is the best of the GIP series. I am convinced now, having played not even all of them, but of the ones that are thought to be the best between this and Yinch. I didn't know anything that would surpass Yinch. This does. Easy, simplistic, deeply tactical, and super, super good, and super, super fun. This is one of my favorite abstracts in my game. It's right up there with Talk and Hive. Those are my top 3, period, right now. No questions asked. If you get yourself a copy of this, you need to, if you're an abstract fan whatsoever, get it, get it, get it, get it. I cannot hype that enough. Valiant Wars. This is the equivalent, and I'll have my review out of this as well soon, from Strange Magic Games. This is the card-based version of Quacks of Gwyndwalaburg or the dice-based Cubitos. This is the card version, essentially, of those, where you're buying heroes, putting them in your deck, then you're just blindly drawing off the top and pressing your luck. It's just press your luck, press your luck, press your luck, whoever gets the most. There's an interesting and a very, very well done balancing mechanic to not give a runaway leader, and that's probably the best thing about this game, because the other downside is there's so many heroes, though, that you just don't get to experience too many of them within the actual game that you play, and sometimes if your deck is shuffled up after every single round, you just might not get that hero that you just bought that's super awesome. But it's solid if you're looking for something light as a filler, especially if you liked Quacks and Cubitos in the first place. Okay, that's it. Snap Judgements, very quick, all in one, all of the new stuff that I played in January. Let me know what you think. Is this something interesting, especially if I play a bunch of new games, especially if I'm trying to get everything on my shelf of opportunity played? Whew. It's a whirlwind. I can give you more thoughts, more detailed thoughts, but I think a lot of people like a little information. I think a lot of people like a lot of information in a little bit of time, and this sort of fits that, and so it was kind of fun to do as well. And we'll see where it goes, and we'll see whether or not you guys like it based on the view counts. But if you do, help the algorithm, help me get spread everywhere, help me go viral. Click like, click up, click subscribe, just tell your friends, post it on Twitter and Board Game Geek, and help me get to 5K, because that's awesome. Stay classy. Have a great day. See you around. Next up, Seas of Havoc, funding on Crowdfunder.